How's it going to all my lovely testers here today? This video is going to be about the Anvil and Torch hard specialization for Warrior Priest. It's a how-to video on how to do it, kind of similar to how I did with the Haggrave Disciple of Cain. Basically just going to go over the abilities, tactics, passives, and adrenaline skills that this class has, just to give people an idea of how to play it so that they aren't so confused when they go in testing. This is only in Phase 4, so it will change in the future, even though it will be on this channel. First off, like most of you guys know, the Warrior Priest has the Righteous Fury mechanic, and it generates using some abilities and is consumed by others. This is a backline version of the Warrior Priest, so rather than the hammer and shield function that use melee abilities to generate Righteous Fury, this one has ways of generating Righteous Fury from range. A good example here is the Divine Replenishment passive. You just naturally gain Righteous Fury every 3 seconds. This is not found on the book itself. It is literally a passive in the class, so it will not change based off of the rarity of the book that you got, like it did on Age of Reckoning. We do have a tag system now, so there's like some tags in here that kind of describe the way the class works. So this is an anchor. It plays similar to a healer. It is designed of keeping people alive, but you will notice as we go through this that they don't have the healer tag, and I'll explain that as I get into it. Symbol just means that they've got a lot of effects that can be dispelled, which you'll see what I'm talking about. They're defensive in nature. They're not really solo friendly because this is like their only damage ability, and these are all buffs. They also have offensive nature. They use a power bar, aka the Righteous Fury. They are primarily ranged class, and they are a support. So first thing, you've got your basic attack judgment. The primary purpose of this basic attack, which you can use from range, as you see here, is it generates 55 action points. There's nothing particularly special about it. There's no modifiers to it. The other way you can generate Righteous Fury or do damage is you can use Wrath, obviously. The only reason this exists is because obviously you need to be able to do some form of damage. It also does scale pretty well with the Emperor's Champion Adrenaline, if you ever wanted to do some spike damage on a healer. And the third and most common way that you'll probably use to generate Righteous Fury is Penance. It is your Dispel. The other thing that it does besides dispelling your defensive target is it applies Shield of Faith. Shield of Faith is a very commonly used mechanic for the Warrior Priest, and it is essentially a small bubble. It scales a little bit off of Restoration Power, and you also have a passive that makes it stronger because you focus on it with this particular class. This is the primary way that you'll generate Righteous Fury, but as you can see, it's only 10 per cast and costs 125 AP, so you can run out of it pretty quickly. The other way that you could generate Righteous Fury is you can use Supplication, which means that you can channel and gain a bunch. Basically, you gain 20 Righteous Fury every 0.5 seconds while you're channeling, but of course you're not moving anymore. So Penance is a Dispel, generates Righteous Fury. Supplication is I need a whole bunch really quickly, and I'm okay with not moving while doing so. You've got some normal standard abilities here. You've got a Crowd Control, which for Warrior Priest is the Vow of Silence, it's just a silence, and you've got a Detox. But when we go into the actual way that this class is built, is these 7 abilities right here. So the Anvil and Torch Warrior Priest is mostly designed around prayers. Prayers are not aura effects like they were on Age of Reckoning. Prayers are individually casted enchantment effects that are all on ability use. So basically you can apply these to people and you gain their effects. So notice I have all 4 of these. They're not like single use. You do get multiple. You can put multiple of them on the same target. So Prayer of Devotion and Prayer of Righteousness are exactly what you used to. Prayer of Devotion heals you every single time that you press any ability. So like right here, I'm getting Prayer of Devotion from using Judgment. Any person who casts any ability whatsoever while they have Prayer of Devotion will get healed. They do not have to hit an enemy target. So even just pressing penance here, I will get healed. Prayer of Righteousness, on the other hand, does actually require you to do damage in order to trigger it, because it is an on-hit effect. So as you can see, I'm doing Judgment and Prayer of Righteous damage because I have it. These other two, Prayer of Immaculate Flesh and Prayer of Absolution, grant you stacks of resistance whenever you use an ability. So Prayer of Immaculate Flesh here gives 1 stack of Enhanced Piercing, Impact, or Ick resistance. So every time you use an ability, you get one of those 3, and those can stack up to 5. Essentially, Prayer of Immaculate Flesh is really good against physical attackers, and Prayer of Absolution is good against magical attackers. Like I said, you can have multiple effects, multiple prayers on the same target. Also, every single prayer grants 1 stack of Purity and Shield of Faith in addition to its enchantment. So not only are you applying those effects, you're also applying the short duration small absorb to them. So it is a little bit of a heal even when you're throwing on the buffs. And then Purity is just the prevention of Chaos Corruption. So it's a chaos, like, counter to the Chaos Corruption system that Chaos units have. While I said that this does play as a healer, it's not marked as a healer, right? And that is because it doesn't have a lot of ways of restoring the enemy's health, or restoring your allies' health. It is primarily has a lot of absorbs, and defensive effects, like increasing their defenses. Your only 3 ways of healing is Prayer, Devotion, Healing Hand, right? So that you can spend Righteous Fury, put an enchantment, you're hot, basically. And Sigmar's Comet, through the Pious Restoration passive. So normally, Sigmar's Comet requires charges, which generate every 8 seconds, and it applies an effect to the target, and then after 5 seconds, it deals damage to them. With the Pious Restoration, you also heal people that are near the person who gets dealt damage to. So whenever you use Sigmar's Comet, you heal people around for up to 3 group mates within 50 feet. So these 3 are basically the only way you have healing people. So it's essentially a proactive style of healing. Like, if you get behind, you will be behind. You could solo heal with this, but eventually your teammates are going to die as you make mistakes. The other major way of spending Righteous Fury, and one of your biggest dumps of it, is Divine Light, which puts a pretty large absorb on a target. And to give you an example of stats, I am running a full willpower set, so these are values that you could expect if you are actually gearing for willpower. Other passives that you have is you've got the Armor of Righteousness, which just gives you a stack of Purity every 3 seconds, makes you pretty good against Chaos units. You've got the Beacon of Courage, so that whenever someone is attacked while you've got your Shield of Faith on them, which you put Shield of Faith using these 4 abilities right here, and also Penance, you gain some Righteous Fury back. You've got the Faith Bastion, where your Shield of Faith gives 3-second cooldown reduction to people, so it's like you put a Shield of Faith on them and they use a cooldown, and it has 3 seconds left. Pious Restoration we already went over. And Touch of the Divine is... So, Divine Light normally costs 60 Righteous Fury. This passive right here, if you put it on somebody and it expires and doesn't actually doesn't get full absorb value, you'll get 40 Righteous Fury back. So you actually get some of your cost back if you don't get the ability used right. Adrenaline's pretty straightforward. You've got the 4 normal ones that you get for being a support, which is your AoE res that also dispels all effects on targets. You've got your AoE absorb, you've got your focused mind, and of course you got your single target resurrection spell. You also have Warrior Priest ones, where you've got one where you can apply Shield of Faith to all your group mates, which is your R1. You've got Hammer Time to get your Righteous Fury back, which is actually pretty useful whenever you're spamming stuff like this and you run out pretty quickly, because even with all these passes, you can see that you can 100% run out of Righteous Fury and have to do this. Sometimes you might not want to, sit here and supplicate, so Hammer Time is a pretty good morale for that. You also have the Emperor's Champion, which is a Empire Adrenaline. You won't see too many Anvil and Torches use this. However, when I was dueling somebody, someone did actually use this in order to make their Wrath hit like a truck, and it was kind of surprising. Avatar Sigmar is also... you become become Sigmar for 30 seconds, and are absolutely ridiculous. This will probably get removed from the Anvil and Torch because the outgoing healing is not actually useful because you don't heal, right? You do primarily absorbs. Some other components to this. The last thing is tactics. Obviously, because you're ranged, you get the Farsight archetype tactic, and of course you have the normal Emperor's Ward and Sigmar's Favored Empire tactics, and you have the Charge Fury, which gives you more Righteous Fury on cast, which is primarily useful for penance. But if you use Wrath, then it affects that too. You got the Fuel Fury, which every Warrior Priest has. If you take damage, you gain Righteous Fury. These are Righteous Fury generators. But then you've got some other things that are shared with other specs of Warrior Priests. So, for example, Lay on Hands makes your Lay on Hands go from 150 feet to 75 feet, but increases its healing by 75%. So if you need to, especially this is a very useful tactic if you're by yourself, right, and don't have another healer to make up, you can increase the amount that one of your only ways of healing people goes up. Preserving Light just makes Divine Light 40% more effective. You can ignore the Light of the Exalted because that is only for Silver Hammer Warrior Priests. Sanctity makes every single one of these group casts, so whenever you cast it on somebody, it goes to the group, but only the initial target will gain the bubble and the purity, so they only get the enchantment effects. Weight of Guilt makes Sigmar's Comet. Apply Marked. Marked reduces the target's damage reduction by 15%. This is just another method of offensive support, so you can help your team out. So while you throw a Sigmar's Comet in order to get the heal later, your team also deals more damage to the target, and so between that and Prayer of Righteousness, you actually can output a fair amount of support damage, especially if you stack Intellect, because both Sigmar's Comet and Prayer of Righteousness scale off spell attack power. Then you've got the 3 tactics that are specific to the Anvil and Torch. You've got Benediction, which is another method of passive Righteous Fury generation. So basically, as long as you're over 250 action points, you will convert 50 AP into 10 Righteous Fury. The reason why it has that action point floor is because obviously you've got the likes of Penance and Vow of Silence that you might want to save action points for. So it makes sure that you always have at least enough action points to cast like 2 dispels, right? And of course you can just use Judgment here to get that AP back to keep yourself above that threshold if you want to get maximum benefit out of this tactic. Grace of Sigmar makes this apply to your entire, makes the dispel apply to your entire group whenever you cast it. So even if you dispel someone outside your group also receives the effect. It will not dispel more than 1 ailment from a target. So if you put Penance, if you dispel a group mate and you have Grace of Sigmar, the group mate that you targeted only gets dispelled once. They won't get both. They won't get 2 ailments cleansed. And then Refreshing Radiance makes your Shield of Faith grant 13 AP regen. So while you are throwing these 5-second bubbles, while those bubbles exist, they get 13 AP. So if you see, it'll swap and it'll say AP regen increased by 13. And that is basically, and that is the Anvil and Torch Warrior Priest. It is a very useful, it was originally classified as a defensive support. Like I said, we now use the tag system, but you can see that it has a lot of support function. It does play exactly like a healer. It just doesn't restore health very well, but it does absorb health very well. I mean, put it this way, you can basically spam if you throw on Preserving Light, you can spam a 1,000 absorb like every 1.5 seconds. So like, you are potent at preventing your team from dying. It's just not that great at restoring it. That is the Anvil and Torch Warrior Priest.